Nancy. Thank you for joining.
I'm so honored to be part of this today. I really am so thrilled to be here. So,
Nancy.
Scarlett.
So
so nice to finally meet you. I've been looking forward to this for quite some time. So,
me too. And thank you all for joining us. So nice to see you all. And Nancy, I've been looking forward to this because I'm obsessed with your book. And, my whole team will tell you that I've been saying, and I will say, I don't know if you've read the book yet or not, but it's not all about you, Jose.
Yeah, I love that.
Right. He's upstairs right now, and it's not all about him. It's not always all about you, Jose.
I mean, like that to me, that has resonated with me so much, because we make everything about ourselves, and it's not all about us. It's so great. And this whole thing is so great. If you can see my book, it's got all sorts of highlights and page turn downs and notes. And
mine has lots of Pride and Prejudice stickers on it. That's how I have all four, the main characters. That's how I mark everything in my book. So
I have you all beat. I have one of those blue stickers almost on every page. And I packed a bag and then I forgot to bring the bag up. So typical of me. And so I don't have the book, but I wish you could see it. They're almost on every page. I just absolutely loved that book.
Well, I'm so grateful. And I have to tell you, I spent a lot of time on the on your website this week, just, looking and just so that we could all have kind of context. And I was like, the messages match so beautifully. I would say, with the exception of the courage that your son showed. I'm not sure that courage is so much a theme of this book, but kindness, gratitude, forgiveness, and how that all interplays. I'm like, it's exactly the same kind of message and the same kind of opportunity that we're all looking for, and we all know instinctively is a better way forward. So I'm glad it resonated for you guys.
Oh, it really did.
I think courage might be one of the elements, don't you, Scarlett?
Sometimes I was going to say, yeah, you say that, and I wrote this down. Fear of not being perfect keeps people from doing things, but thank you notes don't have to be Pulitzer Prize winners. I loved that. But yeah, I mean, I think fear keeps us from doing a lot of things. And even writing a thank you letter, I don't think we think about the ways that courage impacts us on a daily basis. And when I talk about courage and I talk about Jesse's courage, that's we kind of honed it down to two kinds of courage. Yes, there's that extraordinary courage, but then there's everyday courage. And this is the courage that helps us get out of bed and put our best foot forward. It's the courage that helps us tell the truth and do the right thing and be vulnerable and face our fear instead of resisting, avoiding, or even numbing ourselves. And it's also, that is the same courage that it takes to actually put your thoughts down in a note and actually send them to somebody. You wouldn't think that that would take courage, but I think it's really important to acknowledge that it does.
You're absolutely right. And I guess I thought about it. I didn't connect the word courage to it, but I think about that in terms of the inverse, I guess, vulnerability, and encouraging readers to let yourselves be vulnerable. And it was why I included that one statistic I thought was so interesting. We're doing the book club now, right? We're already
we're
going
in.
We just dove right in.
So one of the studies I found so interesting was the one where the social scientists measured how awkward people felt expressing gratitude versus how people felt receiving the note. And people tended to overestimate how awkward they would feel, and they underestimated the positive impact of the letter on the recipient. So here we are feeling like, oh gosh, I don't want to put myself out there. And I remember I had an early reader, because I'm a third kid in a very funny family. My nickname growing up was Aunt Blabby because I talk so much. I was a camp counselor. If there are any former camp counselors, like you got to just get in there and talk to everybody. So when I had finished an early draft, I specifically asked people who are wired differently than me and said, just let me know what you think. And I was surprised, I shouldn't have been, but a few people came back and said, I would feel nervous about sending some of these letters because what if somebody gets a letter and says, I changed your life, I don't even know who you are. And I hadn't thought about that at all because it just didn't cross my mind. And that's when I went back and looked into that. And I think we do tend to think, I don't want to bother somebody. I don't want to embarrass myself. What if they don't remember me? And meanwhile, we are like parched desert ground waiting for somebody to tell us that we have made a difference, that we matter, that we are connected to them. And so it was important to me as much as possible throughout that book to quantify my experience because I knew how I felt every time I wrote a letter. I knew how positively it had impacted me, but I also recognized that people are different from me. And I wanted to ground it in the science and ground it in as much hard facts as I could so that nobody reading it would say, well, that wouldn't apply to me. I don't think it would work for me. You know, I wanted to say it will, and here's why.
Mm-hmm.
So.
That was so good. I have to ask you about your key. You're wearing a key around your neck.
I don't know is the answer. It's been how many years of pandemic? I'm usually not wearing any jewelry at all because I work from home and I was all excited because today I had a reason to get dressed. And I looked in my jewelry box and I literally just pulled it out and went, I don't know where that's from, but it sure is cute. So are you wearing one? Is somebody, I feel like this was a birthday present at some point during the pandemic. That's what I think it is.
Oh, that's funny. And you saying that reminds me of your sense of humor, which you intersperse throughout this book. And I loved it because I think we need to laugh. And I laughed out loud so many times. And I just, through your sense of humor, I felt like I got to know you and that I loved you.
Oh, well, it's mutual. It's mutual through the work, the work you're doing. It's funny because as you may know, I have a podcast called Midlife Mixtape, hence the tape. Book, tape, whatever we're talking about, I can point my arms in either direction. And the interview that's going up next Tuesday. So the show is about what I call the years between being hip and breaking one. And I invite
I think I fall in there.
It's a pretty broad, it's a pretty broad reach. And I always say, if you suddenly break a hip or become hip, either way, you can still listen. But I interviewed this really great musician for next week's show, somebody who I have admired for a long time, and his music more and more is talking about midlife things. And I think it's really interesting as a songwriter to transition from like fall in love, romantic love, all the kinds of stuff that we remember from our teens and 20s. And now he's writing about, well, I've been married a long time and have to, find ways to keep it fresh. And he's a very funny guy. And I asked him about humor and songwriting. And he said, I just was thinking of it because I was editing it today. He said, I'm baffled by people who don't have a sense of humor, who don't use a sense of humor. And he said, you can find them because they're in charge of everything. They've risen much higher than you and I ever will. But he said, I don't want that. If you can't infuse, for me, it's a coping mechanism for sure. And in the same way that gratitude helps me in dark times, I feel like having a sense of humor is just as important. So
I totally agree. I just want to ask Alexis, do you know what that is on the wall on the side?
That's what this is.
I gotta say, my mom has been very good in teaching me about the 80s.
Okay, but this is the real question, because most everybody knows what that is. Do you know? Could you explain for the group, please? How does a Bic pen and a cassette tape, how do those two items correlate?
Oh, don't you rewind it with the pen?
Yeah.
You were such a great mom.
Yeah,
you were such a great
exactly.
mom.
Yeah.
Sometimes younger people say to me, yeah, you write the name of the title on the, and I'm like,
yeah. No,
if you haven't sat twisting a beloved Phil Collins cassette tape back into the, have you
She's
really
saying
lived
we have tapes. We have tapes
tapes and a record player.
Yeah, record player. And so it's like,
Good. Thank God, my soul sister.
Oh yeah. Nancy, I have a question for you. Just going back to when you were talking about the vulnerability before and writing letters. Did you have any letters that came back to you and people were, I want to say, shocked, or that may have ignited a stronger? I know you said you kind of deepened your relationships. Was there any ones that were surprising that you're like, maybe it was a neighbor, someone that you weren't as close to, and then it came back and they were a little shocked, or any fun surprises?
No, it's a great question, Alexis. Nobody's ever asked me that. I would say, so if you've read the book, you know that I started off with letters to family and friends. So I started off with the easy ones where I knew whoever got them would feel happy about it. And in fact, when I initially started this project, I was going to do my 50 letters, and I'm like, January 1st, write down all the people I'm going to write to. And I got to about 22 people, and I'm like, I don't even know 50 people. But my older daughter taught me this great phrase that I use all the time. Sounds like a problem for older me, sounds like a problem for future me, she'll be older and wiser. And I thought, if I'm writing one letter a week, I have till June to meet a whole bunch of new people to write to. But instead, what happened is that the process of writing letters kept making it easier for me to see people right in front of me who I had not really thought to write a thank you letter to. And it all goes back to that idea of positive recall bias and strengthening the act of sitting every week and thinking, okay, who is someone I'm grateful for? What are the specific reasons? And sort of going through that process so that I could write a letter was actually strengthening the neural pathways to make it easier the next week. And so, I got to the end of the initial list, and I was thinking, well, by now I can tell I want to write a thank you letter to the doctor who delivered my children. I want to write a letter to the clerk down at Rocky's Market, my little neighborhood market, who is so kind and nice and has great taste in music and listens to different stuff than I do and always gives me good tips. And so, and then I wrote those letters, and then it occurred to me at some point that all these good feelings that I felt in writing the letter, sort of that sense of peace that I talk about, and this sense of being connected, it was like hitting a big, an electrical device. You have the big red reset button. That's how I felt every week. Like, I've hit my reset button. I'm calmer. I'm more centered. And one day I thought, oh, that I feel it when I finish the letter. I don't feel it when the person responds to the letter. It's great. I loved when people, called me and said, oh, thanks, thank you. It meant so much to me, or whatever they said. That was wonderful. But it was like the cherry on top. It was not the main dish. And so then I thought, oh, so I could write letters and not send them. And so, Alexis, to your question, I think there were some letters I wrote that would have elicited a shocked reaction, which is why I didn't send them. Right. So like the ex-boyfriend in Germany never got his letter, never will. But I felt really good writing it because I knew that there were things in our relationship that I was very lucky to have experienced, and I was an immigrant. I lived abroad in a country where I thought I was fluent, and then I got there, and Bavarian is to German as Texas English is to like the Queen's English. So I was really starting from scratch there. And this guy was like a real support for me during a challenging, exciting time. But he doesn't need to read the letter. He's married, I'm married, like it's messy. So I think in cases where I would have gotten that response, I probably didn't send the letter.
Makes sense.
I'll tell you, but I can give you the flip side of that. And it's kind of funny. I did not write this book so that people would write me thank you letters. And I have to make that very clear, because I started, after the book came out, I did start getting some thank you letters from friends. And I'm like, you guys, you don't have to do that. Like I wasn't trying to guilt you into anything, but I, out of the blue, got a thank you letter from a friend I'd had in college. And the backstory was that when I was at the end of my freshman year of college, my group of friends paired off for housing, and I lost the game of musical chairs. I had nobody to live with. Everybody had made their arrangements, and I didn't know what I was going to do. And these three girls I barely knew said, hey, we've got a quad. We need somebody. Why don't you live with us? And I'm like, okay, because I got to live somewhere. And it ended up being an amazing year because first of all, they're all lovely, wonderful women. And secondly, they had a completely different set of friends than I did. I met so many people that year. I, got to see and do a whole bunch of things I wouldn't have otherwise. And so, I had kind of stayed in touch with them, not too close, but always had that sense of that, they were really kind to me. They were really charitable to me. I kind of was the energy. And so all of a sudden I get this letter from one of them, whose name is also Nancy. Also, her last name starts with D. So we were confusing all the time to people in college who would call on the landline. You remember those? Can I speak with Nancy? Which one? Nancy D. Which one? But the other Nancy D sent me a letter, and she said, one of the things I'm so grateful to you for is that you improved my music taste. She said, I had terrible taste in music, and all that year you dragged me out to see The Cure, you dragged me out to see Squeeze, and you took me to all these concerts, which I'd forgotten I did. And she said, I have much better taste in music because I know you. And I was the one who was shocked in that case, because I thought, oh my gosh, I was not just the taker in that scenario. I had considered myself as somebody who had really needed help, and that's what they had given me. And then I thought, with that letter, and then I only got that, maybe 8 months ago, I was like, oh, wait, I had something to contribute to that relationship. I had something good to bring to the table. And it made me feel better about 20-year-old Nancy. It was a really kind thing she did. So I was surprised, not like, oh, I didn't help you, but more, I was just really gratified to read that. So.
Nancy, what was your mind process? Like, you started writing for, different people, but then, like when I was talking to Alexis, when I started reading the book first and telling her about it, you're writing to places and celebrities that, or writers or people that, are like long gone, that we would not even think of, that have influenced us. Where did you come up with that mindset of writing about, places that had an impact on you, or, and then I know it was for yourself, your own inner self as well. How did you think of that? Because mostly we would think about writing to people or friends, or, like I said, ex-boyfriends and other people in our lives.
It's a great question. And I promise you, none of this was planned. Certainly not having a book about this. I just thought, I'm turning 50. This is a cool thing I'm going to do. Just going to write a letter every week. And it happened really organically, because I didn't rush through this process. As you know, like it ended up taking me a year and a half, because I don't think this is giving anything away. My dad died very suddenly during that year, and I had to take some time away. But it's this positive recall bias, I swear, because each time I wrote the letter, it got easier to find other things to be thankful for. And so picking up where we left off, where I could write letters and not send them to people, I was like, I could also write letters and not send them to places, because the rubric I used was who has helped, shaped, and inspired me. I just kept going back to those three: helped, shaped, inspired. And of course, there were a ton of people who fell into that category: teachers, relatives, friends. But I, thinking about it a little bit more deeply, and with my positive recall bias firing on all cylinders, I was like, I've also really been shaped by where I'm from. And I grew up in Rochester, New York. I haven't lived there since I was 18, but everybody knows I'm from Rochester, and I make sure I'm from Rochester, because I'm proud of that. And this experience moving to Germany at age 22, very formative. And I know there are aspects of who I am now that wouldn't exist if I hadn't had that immigrant experience there when I did. And I live now in Oakland, California. I've been here 25 years. I'm very proud to have had a lot of Oakland rub off on me too. So the places thing, I kind of went and that was fun to think about, just maybe a place you go on vacation, or a place a place you want to go, because especially now when we can't go everywhere we'd like to. I don't know about you guys, but I spend a lot of time fantasizing about where my next big trip is going to be. And I think there's something really comforting about that. And I wouldn't put it, it might be cool to write a letter to Machu Picchu or to Patagonia, or wherever you want to go. And then after the places, I'm like, whatever, I can write to whomever. And each time I know I'm going to feel good. So I will write to Jane Austen, because I love Jane Austen, and her books have changed my life. And Obviously I can't send it to her, but I knew by then that just writing the letter was going to be meaningful to me. So, you know, it went off the rails at that point, Pam. I wrote to the live music industry. You know, you could write to anybody. And the thing that's kind of fun that I've learned since the book came out, other people have, you know, done their own thank you projects. And I had this one reader, it just so happened she lives in Rochester. I didn't know her. She did the thank you project for her 70th birthday. And one of the people she did 70 letters. One of the people she wrote to was a local newscaster in Rochester, because she just really thinks he's great. And that's her favorite newscaster. And she always gets her news from him. He brought her thank you note on air one day. He held it up. He talked about how important it was, that like what it meant to him to get this letter, and how it stood out because it was handwritten and because it was really detailed. And he said, and with that in mind, here's a list of people I would like to thank. And he listed on air all these people. Those people went out on Twitter and they were like, this is awesome. Here's who I want to thank. And it just, those ripples kept going and going. And the funniest part was I ended up getting interviewed by that newscaster because he figured out that I was from Rochester. So I got to be on WROC, which was the station I grew up with. So, you know, it's, I always say, like, if you think you might want the person to read the letter, send the letter, because you don't know what will happen.
And I like too that you keep copies of them. You know, people wouldn't think we write, you know, I'm a writer and I write all the time, and I write notes and letters and cards, and then you never think to really keep copies of them, to inspire yourself, to recall what you thought of, if it's a place or even a person.
Right.
And I think that was just really cool how you did. And then, like you said, you went and you saw it on your father's, you know, desk, that he actually had kept that. And it was almost a reminder to you, a little symbol. And I think that's,
you know, it's the glories of Zoom presentations. I can do some show and tell that I can't, you know, when I'm in person. This was the letter I sent my dad, the actual letter. He framed it and he hung it over his desk. And so I have it now. And it meant so much to me that that's how my dad, you know, he was definitely a long tail guy. Like, hey, Nance, I framed it. I don't assume anybody else framed their letter, but it meant so much to me to know that my dad sat with this for 6 months before he got sick. And then the other thing I have is these are my 50 letters. You can tell I'm not graphically gifted. I just went to the copy shop and just print them out for me. But these are I keep this on my nightstand. I wrote my letters in 2016. I think I'm due to start writing them again. I mean, rewriting back to people again. But I love opening this just to a letter or three. And it's that reminder, not just of the good people in your life, but also that, and I think this is, you know, particularly for this organization and the times in which we find ourselves, it's a good reminder that you have faced hardship before, you have had people come to your aid before, you have not been alone. People have been there for you. So even, you know, for so long last year, we were physically isolated from one another. We did feel alone, and we weren't wrong to feel that way. But these letters are just that reminder that no, these connections are out there, and just to remind yourself of that. And if you never open them, it's still like there's a physical artifact with your team. This is all your people and your places and your pastimes. And, you know, and you're the only one who will ever have that specific collection. So.
And I think people don't think of that in today's world. You know, we'll write things or memos and we print them all, you know, we have them on our computer, we got them on our hard drive, but they don't think to make a Xerox copy or keep something like that that was even handwritten. A lot of times we don't handwrite, you know, it's like I always say it's kind of a lost art. You know, a lot of times when I'm writing, I still have my notepad. She knows I write on the computer sometimes, but I write longhand. I'm there with certain pens that I like, and I don't like yellow paper. I like white paper. You know, and I think that's just really, it's the art of that old art, the traditions to keep alive, of writing notes, thank you notes, letters, anything like that.
Well, and I have to, you know, out myself. I did not handwrite my letters because it was important to me to come up with an approach that was replicable. And my handwriting is terrible by now, and I wanted people to be able to read the letters. But but obviously there are lots of people who have done that way. And I think that's beautiful. I love to get a handwritten letter. You know, to your point, Pam, one of my favorite groups to talk to about the Thank You Project is school groups, because particularly kids who have had the worst, you know, it's been a terrible 18 months for them. For them to take the time, first of all, to stop and identify people around them who are helping, whether they're physically near them or not, you know, those people in their lives who care about them. It's a really particularly valuable exercise right now. But the thing that is really cool about written thank you letters for students is how unusual that is. So much of their communication with others is digital, it's ephemeral, it's a Snapchat, it's a comment on an Instagram post or whatever, and it disappears. It could disappear as soon as they change an algorithm. You've lost any text or communication. So for a kid to write a physical thank you letter, or for a kid to receive a physical thank you letter, it's really meaningful because of the durability and the chance for you to fold it up and put it into your backpack, or keep it in your pocket and pull it out and reread it again. Of course, you could do that with the text, but there's something about the physical artifact of a letter that I think kids just haven't had a lot of experience with. You know, our kids, my kids are in their 20s and they had it a little bit, but they've been in digital world since they were, you know, tweens. So Alexis, does that resonate for you? Does that feel?
Well, I gotta share a quick story because Shreya, who's also on the call, also works with Choose Love and also one of my dear friends. We have this amazing friend group, and we do Secret Santa and everything every year. We do gift giving, all that. I'm the card giver of the friend group. I'm the one that likes to be a writer, and they all look at me like, okay, well, there, you know, likes with her cards. So that's me. I'm a little different. I like books. I don't have a Kindle. I need to print out everything. I don't know. That's just, I'm a little different. So you can't use me as the average millennial.
Retro.
I'm a little retro, but you know, I like to have a mix of both. But yeah, I've been thinking about this thank you project and thinking about, and I write a lot.
I love Shreya. She's really covering all the page. She's
getting a little nervous when she was reading the book. She's like, I'm starting to make my list. I got to start writing those thank you notes. I got to start writing my list.
I was like, oh my gosh, because I'm turning 28 this coming year. So it's like, okay, I got to think of 28 people.
No, you don't. You know that, right? I mean, throughout this book, I keep saying, this is what I did. You can do whatever you like. There are no thank you note police. So the most important thing is to not like psych yourself out because you can't think of 28 people. You just start with the first letter and see what happens. I actually got a note to a really close friend of mine and an early reader and someone who's in the book said, you know what, I just started my thank you letters. I'm like, my book came out a year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago. It took you this long. But she's doing them really slowly, like once every 2 months or once a month. And she's done 4 of them and they've all been great, but she really takes her time figuring out who she's going to write to and what she's going to write about. And everyone has been, you know, like the other person's crying and it's, you know, she's got a complicated family with lots of remarriage. And she says it's been very helpful for her to kind of say stuff that has been hard to say sometimes. So you set your schedule.
Okay.
I'm not checking.
And I think too, it says like near the end of the book, you said you had to be mindful to really notice things, to see what's affecting you, not just like, okay, I'm going to make up, like she said, like, I got to make up a list. I'm going to get 20 people. Okay. That's who I like, you know, it's like really being more mindful and really what has affected you. Not that, okay, just went on a picnic and I like this place. I'm going to thank it now. You know, I think you really have to be, you know, really affected by it and really take note of what is affecting you. And you said too, it's kind of a different three-pronged or so, like you're getting something out of it, someone else is getting something out of it. So it's really a fulfilling project. And it can be, as like you said, as short, as big, as, I don't want to say burdensome, like, you know, she's worried about it, but it can be in little pieces. It could be 2 or 3 notes or so that are really important.
Right. Well, there was the one lady who I interviewed for the book who did 100 notes in 100 days.
Yeah.
And I included that because that freaked me out no end, but she's super nice. She said it was great because she's called it gratitude on steroids. And she said it just changed the way she moves through the world. And So I included that example and also included that research that said that writing a thank you letter and delivering it in person to someone they could measure higher happiness levels for a full month after that. So I did do that in a few cases. I was able to just hand it over. So maybe once a week, my schedule might've been too fast. I could have really slowed down and extended the benefits even more. So I hope that came through in the book, that I just was really encouraging people to do it in a way. The worst thing would be to let's say, 2 letters in, oh, this is exhausting, I can't do it anymore. So that was what I wanted to avoid.
No, definitely. Has anyone else tried on the call a gratitude letter yet, or is everyone just?
Yeah, we want everybody to be able to talk with Nancy and to ask questions if you want to. Please, either in the chat box, or if you want to just type it in the chat box, or just there's a little emoji to raise your hand, or just start talking and we will be quiet, because we don't want to hog Nancy, even though we love her and we could talk to her for 10 hours. Kim Harrison, who is our chairman's wife and a Choose Love ambassador in California, also one of our curriculum writers and professional development trainers. Oh my gosh, I could go on and on about Kim. Hello.
Hello, Kim.
Hi.
Where in California are you?
I am in San Diego, but
Okay.
like you, I'm an upstate New York girl from Skinny
What
Habit. So
Nice.
yeah, that's kind of interesting. But I'm a little late to the party. I didn't get your book yet, but I'm really excited because we have put so much in the gratitude unit, and we do have the students write in their journals, gratitude journals all the time. We have additional other lessons that they're doing more writing, but you're giving me more ideas to enhance the curriculum, which is great. But also we're preparing a master class on each pillar. So I'm working on the gratitude one right now. So, and this will be delivered to teachers so they can understand, the whole benefits of gratitude across the board for themselves, and then also professionally in the classroom. So I'm just really excited to be here, and I'm taking notes, and I love positive recall bias. That's really perfect.
So good.
And
I love that.
Like getting those neurotransmitted pathways going, and it makes it easier the next time. So I am definitely going to be, excited to get the book and learn more. So thank you.
Good. Well, if there's any information I can provide you, obviously, please reach out. I mean, the thing about positive recall bias, the inverse of that obviously is negative recall bias. And I always feel like I need to defend that too, because negative recall bias is important. That is what reminds us to go back to the car and get our masks before we go into a crowded place, or, to wash our hands after we've been out among people. But the problem, it protects you. It's what initiates your fight or flight mechanism. But the problem is when you get stuck there. And so researchers were looking at this question of how do you change so that you don't wake up every day saying, what's out to get me today? And the best way to get rid of negative recall bias is to strengthen positive recall bias. It's not to tell yourself, oh, you're being silly, you're worrying too much, or anything like that, because you can be having very legitimate concerns. But if you are also good at saying, even though I'm stressed right now, I really love these shoes I'm wearing, or I'm looking forward to lunch this afternoon. And this is, Kim, I don't know if this fits into your curriculum at all, but one of the other things I talk about to school groups is, I wrote the book this way too. There may be people who hear about this and never get around to writing a letter. It's not a fit for them. That's fine. But what I hope to leave you with is a framework for thinking through, first of all, thinking really deeply about people in your life for whom you are grateful, and specifically why, but also, any kind of additional gratitude you can add is great. And so one of the things I do personally, and I always tell school groups, is just stopping myself in my tracks and say, what are 3 good things right now? So I just gave you that example, like the shoes and the food. There are a lot of times when I can't get to sleep at night. That's what I do. I just say, okay, the air is clear in Northern California. That's not something to take for granted. And Kim knows that. I can hear my dog snoring. Not always a blessing, but a lot of the times it is a blessing to, just remember you've got that little creature with you, or whatever, it can be very small. And I think there's a real power in taking ownership or taking control, I guess, of your experience of gratitude. It doesn't have to be passive. It doesn't have to be something that happens to you. Something good has to happen in order for you to be grateful. It's more about shifting your mindset and saying there's always something to be grateful about. There's always someone to be grateful for. I just have to slow down and see them and find, like, elevate them in my awareness. And so, yeah, that's, you know, the 3 good things is a no-brainer. That's, everybody can pull that out of their wallet at any time.
And that's
you don't even need pen and paper for that one.
Yeah, that's such a good practice. And our negative recall bias is how we're wired to think. Our brains want to keep us safe. So they're scanning for danger and they're scanning for negativity. So this gratitude, we say, and actually Doug came up with this. You and Doug came up with this. Gratitude is shifting the focus of our lens from whatever fearful, frustrated, angry, resentful thought that we're thinking to gratitude, because we can only focus on one thought at a time. So you choose the thought, which is kind of cool. My mom made a comment, and I love this, Mom, and let's discuss, Mom, while you're on the call. Let's ask Nancy what she thinks. Dalai Lama said to be grateful for your enemies because they're your greatest teachers. So reason to write and to thank someone for whom you do not have the fondest memories. And I think, Nancy, you referred to that on page 40 as turning trash into gold. And I wrote that down here because I loved that, turning trash into gold, seeing all the difficulty and the difficult people in your lives as opportunities for growth.
Right. And, you know, the example that comes to mind there, and believe me, this was not letter 6. This was like letter 43. I was pretty far down in terms of developing the positive recall bias, but absolutely by that time I could tell that helped, shaped, or inspired. Boy, we get a lot of that from negative example, don't we? I mean, not everything goes great all the time. And so one of the letters that I wrote and did not send was to a college friend who I had been very close to, you know, and throughout the friendship, something felt off to me. I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but when I was about 23, and in fact, I was living in Germany and she'd come for a visit, and it was just a car pileup of, she took some of my stuff. She was, you know, just a whole bunch of things. And I said to her, we're done. We are done. This is not a friendship. You are using me and we are done. And it was a horrible day. I can still picture it very clearly. But at age 23, I had learned an important lesson, which is that there should be balance in a friendship. There should be give and take. There should be trust. And boy, was I lucky to learn that so young, because now, you know, since I was 23, I can tell when something's off, and either there's going to be a very frank discussion where we clear the air, or that's not a friend for me. And so I was really grateful to her for teaching me that lesson. Even if she's not my favorite person. I have no idea what she's up to now. I wasn't going to send a letter to her, but that was a really important lesson. And another one that's a little lighter is that I went to Germany. I was sure I was going to be there for 5 years. I moved there when I was 22. I had this master plan. You know how master plans go. So I was going to be there for 5 years and then come back and get my master's degree. And I started working for this company, and my boss was cuckoo nutty. I mean, just not a great boss. And I made 2 years and I was like, I'm tapping out. I cannot do this one day longer. So I ended up coming back to the States much earlier than I anticipated and going to this graduate school program where I overlapped by 1 semester to the guy I've been married to for 29 years. So had I not had such a terrible experience and been driven out of Germany by this terrible boss, I didn't have a terrible, I mean, Germany was great, but the timing was not what I expected, but it was what I needed because that's how I met my husband. So that's another way, like I could write a thank you letter to that guy. I chose not to just because I didn't feel like it, but you know, that I'm grateful for the role that he played in connecting me to the person who I love. So, you know, you can look at lots, and I think it takes, what's the time plus tragedy equals humor. I think that's, you know, sometimes you might not be able to write those thank you letters 2 minutes after you've learned the hard lesson or while you're still learning the hard lesson, but it's always something you can come back to, and you can, and even as it is happening, you can kind of reassure yourself, I'm learning lessons here and someday I'll be grateful for them.
Yeah. And hopefully you can do that quicker and you don't have to wait so long.
Right.
You have to do that.
Don't wait till you're 50.
Exactly. I loved when you said, people are more likely, this is page 60, people are more likely to express gratitude to a waiter than to a spouse. And that was an experiment that someone did. And I thought, is that incredible? And like, I don't even understand that, but I can see that.
Yeah, I mean, I could totally see it because, and I said in the book, you know, there's a little bit of comfort knowing that you don't have to say thank you to your partner or your child or your mom every 6 seconds, because those people are doing the most for you. And, you know, if you really had to call out and acknowledge every single thing that, let's say, your spouse has done for you, it would be a long, long day every day. However, you know, all of us, I think, want to feel seen, appreciated, acknowledged. And so writing a thank you letter to the people you're the closest to and taking just once, for, you know, maybe you do it more than once, but taking time to step back and say, what are the things that you have taught me? What are the things that you bring into my life? What are the things that I'm super grateful for? And it was funny because my husband, who has a fantastic sense of humor, I said, I'm going to write, hey, Andrew, my birthday's coming. I'm going to write 50 thank you letters this year. He said, don't send one to me. And I'm like, what is wrong with you? Why? Of course, I'm going to send one to you. And so when I wrote it to him, I was like, bam, there's your thank you letter. Psych. And he loved it. And it was, you know, and I loved writing it because at that point we'd been married, I guess, 22 years or so. And I can't do math, 24 years. And it was just kind of nice to step back and really think specifically, like how, you know, what are the things that I wouldn't have if I were not married to you? And what does that mean to me to be able to have them? And, you know, I'll tell you this, my husband, when we travel, my husband goes and gets me a coffee every morning, every hotel, every Airbnb, he goes out and sources me a black coffee. And that, my friends, is worth a lot of nonsense that I put up with, because the coffee is key. So that was in the letter I sent him, like, you get me coffee wherever we go. So yeah, you know, there's, and I really enjoyed writing letters to my kids. I enjoyed writing letters to my siblings with whom I'm close, just because we so rarely take that opportunity to step back with the people we're closest to. So yes, I say thank you to waiters all the time, Scarlett. That's how I was raised. But do I thank my husband for, you know, filling out the mortgage refi paperwork? Maybe I should.
Well, I think you bring up a really good point, and you made it in your book too, which is it doesn't have to be something huge. It can be something small, and that gets our oxytocin flowing. I mean, really, do you think, because I'm reading this book and I'm thinking, is it all about gratitude? Is like happiness in life, does it all boil down to how you look at things and your ability to be thankful?
Well, I'm biased, but I will say yes. I mean, certainly the research shows that our physical well-being benefits from operating from a state of gratitude. So some of the stuff that's in there, you know, people with asthma have better asthma control after they've made a deliberate expression of gratitude. You sleep better, your blood pressure drops, your heart rate drops, you know, all these really good, juicy physical benefits that can be measured after you've made a deliberate expression of gratitude, which can be, you know, verbal, but it can be a letter, whatever it is. It would seem to suggest that we do best when we operate from a place of gratitude. And what I say, you know, the subtitle for the book is Cultivating Happiness, One Letter of Gratitude at a Time. And what I really encourage people is to forget about the happiness part. Like, the pursuit of happiness will kill you. you can, because what is it and how do you ever find it? But if you cultivate gratitude, happiness is what grows.
Got it. Mhm.
You know, and that's the kind of the crop that comes after, and you get the benefit of that. But it's not like I would feel sad if I thought somebody was doing this just out of a sense of like, how can I make myself feel better? Because it is so much about the other person too. And that's a beautiful thing. It's a self-help practice, I think, that benefits someone else just as much.
Hey, it's not all about you, Jose.
It's not always all about you, Jose.
Nancy had a quick question on how did you come up with all of your musical selections? I mean, I was reading them and I'm like, I know some and I know most of them, some I didn't. And I'm like, they were so pertinent to each one. How did you
They were great.
go through them and find them?
That is a faulty wiring setting in my brain. I think in lyrics all the time. I remember song titles. It's not helpful when I can't remember people's names or that I have to go somewhere, but I think, there's a stroke song that's just about this. So yeah, the playlists were, one of my favorite parts of writing the book. And I will tell you, I spent as much time refining the playlist as I did writing the entire book. And my editor was finally like, you just need to finalize those and send them in. Okay. But I do get really a charge. I've always been somebody who loves music. And to me, it was just kind of a fun way to evoke the mood of whatever. So each chapter, if you haven't read the book, each chapter gives you kinds of people to whom you might want to write. And so, for instance, when I was writing, Kim will appreciate this, when I was writing my AP English teacher, I had to come up with a song that was appropriate for thanking a teacher. And it turns out there are none, because they're all smutty and they're all about hot for teacher. And, they're terrible. So songwriters of the world, we need some G-rated songs about being thankful for teachers. But it was, I loved doing those. And hopefully that's just something that people enjoy. And I put them all up on Spotify so you can stream them as you're reading.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, they went from they went from like the Beatles to country to years ago. And I just love that they're so eclectic.
I grew up in an old school country house. I love new wave. My brother loved rock. My kids are into, I live in Oakland, so I know a lot of rap. It's just group effort.
Cool. It was really neat.
I want to ask Anna. I know Anna always has some really thoughtful comments. And Anna, do you want to say something? Add something?
And she has a cute canine companion too, so I appreciate that.
Okay, so I've been listening and thinking, and I read your book, and I've done thank you letters over the years, but I haven't done it in a way that you did it, and I want to do it that way because I like the idea of the compiling. But what your book does for me is it has me wrap my head around how would I. Let me back up first. This morning, a student of mine sent me a YouTube called Is Success Luck or Hard Work? And the reason I put it in there is because of what you and Scarlett said at the beginning about being grateful about where we are. So it's about, like, if I was born in Africa and I was born in the poorest country, I could work as hard as I was going to work, and I'm still only going to make $872 a year. And I could have been born in North America and work really, really hard and make $100,000 or $200,000 a year. And so what we do is our bias is we forget the luck part of where we're at. So I just wanted to share that with you. But what I wanted to share with you, Nancy, is when I was walking, I was thinking about if I could approach my child's classroom teacher and say, could I come in once a week to do a little thing around gratitude, to have the kids do it, because this COVID has created such a horrible umbrella of oppression that all this stuff is being manifested. And then I just got hired part-time with our local police service as the equity, diversity, and inclusion coordinator, and the morale is low. And so I was trying to figure out, doing the same thing over and over again doesn't switch. Racism, sexism, every other ism you can think about has been around for decades, for centuries. What would happen if they would give me the permission to work with a group like you had your control group and your other group, and say, what would happen to the system if I could do a gratitude project within the organization, but I can't frame my head around what that might look like, or how could I frame it so they don't poo-poo me? Because when you talk to an institution about doing a gratitude project, it might not be heard because it's very unlikely. So that's where my head is going. Yeah,
it's a soft skill, so people devalue it, which is, kind of silly. But there's I really appreciate the thoughtful question and comments, Anna. Two things come to mind. One is, I don't know if you've gotten to the part yet where I wrote about the disconnect in the workplace between how much people want to have gratitude expressed to them versus how much they express it. So we all know we want to feel valued at work, and yet we don't often say anything to the people right in front of us who are our work colleagues. And so I've done a couple of presentations within, work teams where we've talked about this. And, maybe it's a gratitude journal that sits out by the coffee machine and everybody can write something in it that they're grateful for. Or maybe it's a whiteboard where during your team meeting every week, everybody can go around and say one thing they're grateful for. Doing that, I ran I'm a member of the Episcopal Church here, and I ran the stewardship team last year. And I made people say something they were grateful for at the outset of every meeting, because it really sets a tone. It really encourages, kind of connection and puts people in the right frame of mind. So I think you're really onto something with the idea of testing how that could work. It might look like a gratitude letter, it might not, but that idea of increasing job satisfaction, work satisfaction through something that's free and doesn't take a lot of time, I think is important. The other thing, since you mentioned police, I didn't write to any, I don't know any policemen personally, but if I did, I might write a letter to someone who I could, who I had something specific to say. And the closest parallel, I think, is writing to the obstetrician who delivered my daughters, just because it's also a profession that we rely on. And when we don't need it, we're not thinking about it, right? When we, the police, the doctors, nurses, certainly in the past year and a half, the medical community has, put out Herculean efforts to help us all. And so I had written a letter to my obstetrician because, and this was when my girls were 15 and 18. I just thought, boy, if you think about people who help shape, inspire you, the ones who deliver your babies into the world are really right up there. Because if they were not so good at their job, that your life can look different. So I wrote a letter off to Dr. Green, and she wrote me back. I didn't always get letters back. That was the minority of people who wrote me back, but she did. And she said, I never hear from people. And she said, it means so much to me for you to say that I made a difference in your life. And I just thought, boy, she should be hearing from people all the time. And public servants should be hearing from people. And, if someone's really out there fighting to make your life better, maybe the project is not about having the police doing it, but the community writing to them. I think there are creative ways, and maybe there's ways for the police to write to the community, because in doing that, they're also cataloging the good things around them. So I think there are creative ways to do that.
I really like that, but here's the thing that also dawned on me, because this is just happening. The police service is having their annual community awards, and one of the people involved with one of the awards, we had a conversation today, and it wasn't as uplifting as one would think when you're talking about awards. But when I'm thinking about what you're saying, Nancy, that maybe it's not about recognition for me having an accomplishment, because an award is a one-time, one shot, and somebody else is choosing to give it to me. But if we could somehow change that process into gratefulness, so that when I'm getting it, it's actually about the gratitude versus the whatever it is that you're getting. It might help to do the shift. But I like the idea about the community writing to the police service, because I don't know about your police services, but ours are getting lambasted with lots of things that are not seen, like defund the police and all of those other nifty little things. But I also believe, I like the idea about the coffee by the coffee machine or by the whiteboard, because what happens when you do the recognition of people within an organization, we miss people. We miss the quiet person. We miss the person behind the scenes who's doing the work, but is just there, and no one, they don't get the award because they're the one nominating people for the award, or they're not the one, but they would probably get recognized by somebody else in their team, and then that might start the ball rolling, and maybe they would listen to me about that versus me trying to do a letter writing project at the police station.
Right.
Don't think I won't try later on though.
Well, you can work up to it. You get everybody's positive recall bias going, and then you can work your way up to it. Yeah, and I think after seeing that research, I work, my day job is in digital publishing. I work for a small consultancy, and we help publishers license their content out into other platforms. And we have one guy, just like Anna's explained, we have one guy on our team who's so quiet, never tries to get in the spotlight, but he works so hard, and without him, we'd be lost. And I have really tried ever since doing that research. I will call him out in meetings and say, boy, that chart he put together was amazing, because when we went to the client, they were really pleased with it. And I think it's catching. I think because I hear other people doing it, and I think we can all in our workplaces, by openly and just comfortably and naturally expressing gratitude. It's funny. I think it's considered a bit of a feminine, sometimes it can be considered kind of a feminine approach. And I think that's good. I think we don't need to be hard edged. We're not men. We have different ways of interacting and holding our power. And I think acknowledging the team members who've helped us, sure, maybe it is feminine, and maybe everybody should try that. Because a lot of what's gone on in the world has not worked that well. So trying a little kindness.
That's quite a concept, Nancy.
I can imagine.
Well,
women ran the world.
Melissa and Barbara and Jan, if you guys want to ask a question or make a comment, please feel free. I have my book. Oh, go ahead.
I saw someone asked questions about where to get the playlist and everything. So I'm just going to put my website in the chat, and from there you can find the book, the playlist, the podcast. And actually, World Gratitude Day was September 21st. I'm sure you sent a fruit basket. And so my podcast episode, the most recent one, is with this amazing woman named Christy Nelson, who is the head of gratefulness.org. And I had her come on to talk about gratitude versus gratefulness. And if this is a topic that you want to dive deeper in, I thought I learned a lot from my conversation with her. So you can find that if you go to Midlife Mixtape, the Midlife Mixtape podcast on Apple or Spotify, wherever you find podcasts. The most recent episode is also about gratefulness and gratitude. And I loved, she had such a great perspective. She's a stage 4 cancer survivor who realized that for the first couple of years after she recovered, she said, I woke up every day and was like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad for this day. I feel so lucky. And then one day she didn't think that anymore. And she said, I realized I'd changed my baseline and I had to figure out how to change it back. And so the one thing she said that I just loved was, it's not about whether the glass is half empty or half full. It's remembering to be grateful you have a glass. Mm-hmm. And so you might want to check out that conversation. I learned a lot from her.
Oh, we absolutely will.
Oh, we also didn't mention that you wrote the letter to yourself.
Yeah.
Yes, the last letter. One of the other things that surprised me about this project is when I was getting to 50, and actually I wrote it the night before my 51st birthday. So that's how long it took me, a bit over a year to do this. I felt proud. I felt proud looking at all the people that I had the good sense to associate myself with, the people who I had kept, the people who I had cut free, the whole process of writing these letters was a way for me to regain perspective about who I was at that point in my life, the lessons I chose, that I'd allowed myself to absorb, the negative situations that I had learned something important from. And I hope every reader and writer gets to that point where they can look at their collection, however big it is, and say, I built that. Those are my people, that's my team, and I'm the only person I'm the center point for that wheel. And take a moment to be, express some gratitude, some self-compassion, it was pride. And I don't think in the negative sense, and I had learned a lot about myself writing those letters that year, and I wanted to acknowledge that too. So.
Well, I'm looking at, I know we're wrapping up now. We want to be respectful of your time, Nancy, and
not my time. It's Arlo the dog's time outside. Who's like, are you ever going to feed me again?
Hello.
Every week we have this argument.
Well, we started with, it's not all about you, Jose, and I'm on page 176 of the book, and and you say, remember that the definition of gratitude from Dr. Emmons, and by the way, I'd never heard this before, at the beginning of the book, it includes recognition that the source of goodness in your life lies, quote, at least partially outside the self. And you say, italics, mind, baby. He's saying that at least part of the source of goodness in your life is inside the self. Jose, it's finally about you.
That's when you get to write your letter, Jose, when you have figured out all the good you've gotten from other people and how you've turned that into the magical person who you are. There's nobody else like you. There's nobody who's got that combination of influences. And I love the idea, when I was writing about how I wrote a letter to the live music industry because I love to go to concerts, and it was fun for me to think, there might be people who write to like knitting, or maybe there's people who will write to NASCAR. And I love that idea that each of us has these quirks and interests and hobbies and passions that make us who we are. And why wouldn't you be grateful for that in yourself,
I love that. I think I'll read this last part of your book and then ask you for any closing comments. But you say, in an era characterized by brokenness and isolation, you built yourself a no emissions, solar powered gratitude factory to put healing, positive energy into a world badly in need of more of it. And I really think that that's what this book does. I'm obsessed with this book. I love it, love it, love it. I've been talking nonstop. My team knows that for sure. And I want to thank you for writing it and putting it out into the world. I really feel like it's a gift. There's so much more. I mean, I feel like we could be talking to you for hours, but thank you so much for joining us tonight. And are there any words that you want to leave us with?
Well, I am so grateful to be here. I'm so honored and humbled, given the work that your organization does, and I want to lift up everything I said today in Jesse's memory, and know that he's here with us.
Absolutely.
I will say, if any of you, if you've gotten the book and you would like a signed book plate, I would be honored to throw that in the mail for you. So I just put my email address in there. Just shoot me a quick email with your snail mail address, since I don't think I'm going on the road. I was on the road for 3 months when the book came out, and then COVID, so everything's been Zoom since. But if you want to shoot me an email, I would love to send you a signed book plate. And I think this book would have been useful whenever it came out. Yeah. Because I had gone through it myself. I knew that it was of service to me, so I was hopeful that it would be of service to readers. But that it came out right before the pandemic, I'm hopeful that it is a tool to help people rebuild what new normal looks like, to value even the smallest things around you, because a lot of us most of us were reduced to looking at the smallest things around us for a long time and remembering that that's not nothing. So again, I'm just super grateful. It's so nice to meet all of you. And I hope we'll cross paths IRL someday. I hope I will eventually get back on a plane.
You will, because I've been on a plane all over the place in the
Have
last
you?
couple of weeks. Yeah, actually in the last month. So
Okay.
it's starting again, but we're just so grateful for you. Thank you so much. This was such a fun book. I laughed out loud and I really needed to do that. I have recommended it to everybody that I know, and we're just, thank you. Thanks for joining us. Thank you for being here, and you will forever be connected to the Choose Love movement.
I am so grateful for that. Thank you, you guys. Thank you so much. I'm going to go feed Arlo before he spontaneously combusts.
Absolutely.
Everybody have a nice evening.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Appreciate it.
Nancy. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining.